Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling one of the most persistent myths in cybersecurity, something I guarantee you've seen in a million movies and TV shows. You know the scene, right? The hero's in a jam, they get a phone number, and boom, a blinking red dot appears on a map showing the target's exact real-time location. It's a great plot device for sure, but how much of that is actually real? Well, let's dive in and separate the fact from the fiction. Yeah, this is the fantasy, what we call the Hollywood hacker myth. It's this idea that cybersecurity is this dark, mysterious art, and there must be these magical tools out there that can do the impossible with just a few keystrokes. I'm sure you've seen them online. You know, these websites, apps, and even these little Python scripts that you can download, and they all promise the same thing: track any number, anywhere. But what's really happening when you use one of them? What's going on under the hood? Well, here's where we see the massive gap between the claim and the reality. These tools, they're not hacking into GPS satellites or anything nearly that exciting. No. Instead, they're using a much less precise method called IP geolocation. So, unlike GPS, which gets a direct, precise signal from satellites in orbit, IP geolocation is more like detective work. It's not a direct measurement. It just pieces together a bunch of clues from network data to make an educated guess about where you are. And this quote from MaxMind, one of the big players in the space, just hits the nail on the head. They call it part art, part science. It's an estimation, not an exact science. So the big question is, how accurate are these estimations, really? As you can see right here, the accuracy just falls off a cliff the more specific you try to get. I mean, sure, it's pretty much guaranteed to get the country right. But the state or province, it's getting a bit shaky. And finding the right city, that's literally a coin toss. Pinpointing an actual street address? No way. It's just not possible with this method. So let's be crystal clear. Those dramatic scenes of hackers using some slick-looking software in Kali Linux to get an instant GPS lock on someone, it's pure fiction. Real high-stakes tracking is a completely different ballgame. Okay, so now that we've totally debunked the Hollywood version, let's get into how legitimate, high-level location tracking is actually done. And spoiler alert, it doesn't happen with a simple script. It happens deep inside the core of the global telecommunications network itself. At the heart of it all is this system called SS7. Now, I want you to think of it as the hidden nervous system of the entire phone network. It's what handles all the background chatter that sets up your calls and routes your texts. But here's the thing. It was built way back in an era of trust, when all the phone companies just trusted each other. And because of that, it has some pretty well-known vulnerabilities that can be exploited for things like location tracking. One of the most powerful tools that uses this network is something called a silent SMS. It's basically a totally covert ping. An agency can send this invisible message to a phone. You don't see it, you don't hear it, no notification, no buzz, nothing. But your phone automatically replies to the network, and in doing so, it reveals which cell tower it's connected to. It gives away your general location without you ever knowing. And believe me, this isn't just theoretical. In Germany, for example, federal agencies sent almost 100,000 of these silent messages in a single year. Think about that, just to build movement profiles of suspects. So, who actually gets to do this? Well, not just anyone. Access to these incredibly powerful systems is not open to the public. It is tightly controlled and legally restricted to three groups: the telecom providers themselves, law enforcement agencies who have a proper warrant, and of course, government intelligence agencies. Okay, I know this all might sound a little bit alarming, but the good news is your phone is not just a sitting duck. In fact, modern smartphones have some really sophisticated built-in protections that are designed specifically to guard your privacy. And this really brings us to a super important concept: geo-privacy. It's a simple but powerful idea. You, the individual, have the right to determine who gets to know where you are and when. And modern operating systems, they're built with this principle right at their core. For example, if you look at modern phone operating systems, they give you an incredible amount of control. You can grant an app permission to see your location just once, not forever. There's always that little icon in the status bar that tells you, hey, an app is using your location right now. And you can just tap that icon to see a full log of which apps have accessed it and revoke their permission right there on the spot. And beyond what's already built in, there are more steps you can take. First, always keep your software updated. And if you're ever in a truly sensitive situation, just remember that airplane mode is your best friend. It's your most effective, surefire tool against any kind of network-level tracking. So if all that Hollywood hacking stuff is basically fake, where should someone who's genuinely curious about cybersecurity focus their energy? Well, the answer is in building real, foundational skills. The first, and maybe the most important step, is to cultivate a healthy sense of skepticism. A real security pro doesn't just accept things at face value. They have this little voice in the back of their head that questions everything. That's the mindset you want to develop. So instead of chasing these myths, focus on a real learning path. Learn the fundamentals, how networks and operating systems are actually built. Practice your skills in ethical ways, like through bug bounties or defensive security exercises. And you know what? Be curious about those complicated old systems that everyone else is afraid to touch. That's where the real learning happens. Because ultimately, the real power isn't in some magic track phone button. It's in the deep, patient, sometimes frustrating work of truly understanding how technology functions. And let me tell you, that is a skill that will always, always be in demand.